Hi everybody! It's the end of the month, so it's time to show you all the pages I coloured during October of 2024. And as October is Halloween month, it is spooky season, so I decided to take that as my theme for the month. So there will be quite a few kind of darker, more gothic style colouring pages coming up. There is one that's slightly gory a little bit later on as well, and I will warn again before I show that one. But I did colour quite a few kind of skeleton sort of zombie style pictures, so if anybody isn't interested in watching any of those, then please feel free to be turning off. But for everyone else, I will show the pages that I did colour this month. And right from the start, we're going to be looking at a skeleton kind of guy. And this one is actually an A3 size poster that came with this book by Anne Stokes off of Etsy, the 13 Halloween colouring pages. And if you do go ahead and buy this book, you do get an art print as well by Anne Stokes. This guy here. And he is actually the first page in the colouring book as well. You can see that, the same kind of line art there. And you do actually get an A3 size of this colouring page with a little bit more extra detail. This frame around the edges here. And the poster is what I decided to colour. And I did him mostly on camera. And we did end up making a video on that on the channel for this month. I'll try and get him all on camera, but he is pretty big. Here we go. This is the guy that we coloured. And this paper that the poster is printed on, it's pretty smooth, so it was a little bit difficult to colour. You could use markers on it, so that's what I did. I used the alcohol markers as a base, just went on top with some pencil shading. I found that you could get a couple of layers of pencil on top of your alcohol markers, and I did use a few acrylic markers as well, I think, on that one. Of course, the white gel pen, that's pretty much a staple for me, but yeah, I was really pleased with how this one came out. I really love the way the flames kind of look as if they're shining on that one. So yeah, it was a bit of a challenge, I think, a bit of an experience. It did take quite a long time to colour that one, but worth it, I think. It does end up looking really good once it's coloured. Not sure if I can get him on. No, if I turn him the right way up, I can't get him all the way on. I did bump the camera there. I do apologise, but yeah, that's the first guy that we did colour, and I coloured him with a marker base and the pencil on top. And most of that is a video on the channel. I had to really shorten it quite a lot because there was quite a lot of colouring time actually involved in that. But yeah, that is a video on the channel for that one. And I'll just get him out of the way before we move on to the colouring books. So this is the first picture that I coloured this month. This is also from Anne Stokes, a fantasy collection colouring book here. And this one was a work in progress at the start of the month. And it's one that I forgot to put into my work in progress video. But I did manage to find a screenshot of it in my colouring book collection video. So I'll pop that up here. You can see the stage she was in before I actually started. And I did start her with my pastel colours that I never get around to actually finishing. I think she was going to be part of a challenge to use a vintage kind of style colour. So I wanted to use really faded colours, really kind of pastel colours with her, and that never works for me. So I ended up going back to her this month, and I'll show you how she's actually ended up. Again, quite pleased with this one, how she's turned out. Another quite big one to be getting onto camera there, but there she is. And for this one, I think I started to draw off with the markers. There was only a little bit of basing done, I think, in the beginning, maybe her skin and hair. I can't remember if I did her dress, maybe a bit of the background, I can't remember, but this is how we've ended up. And to finish her off, I stuck with the theme of vintage. I tried to give her a vintage kind of gothic romance sort of feeling there. And I carried on with the marker base. You can see there, I gave her a marker base pretty much all over the page there. I ended up bringing in some washi tape, this frame around the edge here, the thin frame, that is washi tape. Her skirt is washi tape because I didn't like the colour that I'd used for her skirt, so I ended up covering that with some washi tape, and I think that's worked really well. Tied in all the colours to the kind of reds of her skirt there. This frame here is gold Sharpie, this kind of thin gold frame here. The hearts are stickers, and they are 3D stickers. They're really quite pretty, those, if I can bring those up a little bit so we can see. Yeah, those are actually 3D sort of style stickers there, with the little bit in the middle sticking down, and the kind of sides of the hearts are lifting up to give it a little bit of a 3D sort of appearance there, which I thought was really cool. And I added in some stick-on crystals there in the middle of the hearts. There is a bit of paper collage going on here because if I remember right, there was a window, a random window here with lots of kind of trees, foliage and stuff coming into the sides of the picture there, which I didn't really feel like colouring trees. If anyone watches the channel, they know that I don't really like colouring trees, so I wanted to avoid those if possible. And I thought the window didn't really fit in with the picture, so I ended up collaging in this love letter that I found online. I think I googled something like love letter fancy script or something along those lines, and it came up with this kind of generic sort of love letter in this really kind of calligraphy sort of style writing here, which I thought would look really cool with the kind of gothic-y feel. So I printed that out and ripped it up and stuck that down in the background. I think I stained it with chalk pastel to give it that kind of parchmenty look, and I think that worked quite well in the background. I covered up the leaves of the trees here and here with some leaves that I cut out of a gardening book. I thought those fitted in with my colour scheme quite well. Although I do wish I'd gone more towards the orangey reds than the more Christmassy reds, because I think she has got a little bit of a Christmas vibe going on, but I think I can live with it. There's enough gothic in there that I think I can live with it. So collage for the paper and the leaves. And these brown leaves here, they were cut out of a scrapbook paper page, a kind of a leafy pattern. I thought the leaves fitted in the same kind of shape as the leaves that were already drawn in there. So yeah, I put a few of those on just for a little bit of extra interest there. I went for a kind of bouquet style background here with the alcohol markers and coming in with a colourless blender to draw in a few circles and then shading on top with pencils to enhance that kind of blurry sort of bokeh effect we had going on in the background, and I think that's worked quite well. And yeah, altogether really pleased with how she's turned out. I do love playing with that kind of Victorian sort of gothic romance kind of style. Next, we're moving on to Little Cutie Special Colouring Heaven. This is by Daria Sakisoy. And for this one, I actually randomised everything I was going to be colouring for this day. I used a random generator that I found online, and I actually randomised the issue of Colouring Heaven I would colour in, which ended up being this one. I randomised the page number I would colour, the art supplies I would use to colour it, and the colour palette. So nothing could be planned for this one at all. It was all just a surprise for me as it was for you. The lady we coloured was the second picture, so there we go. Page number 2 is what we ended up drawing. And yeah, I'm quite pleased with how she turned out. The art supplies I ended up with were chalk pastels and coloured pencils. So instead of keeping things easy and just keeping the lady to the coloured pencils and bringing in the pastels for the background, I thought maybe that would have been a bit of a cheat, kind of against the point of the challenge. I used the chalk pastels as a base for the coloured pencils, so I coloured the whole thing with chalk pastels first and then went in with the pencils to shade, and I did bring in the white gel pen. I didn't think I'd be able to do it without one, and I always use one. I use one so much that I'm not going to deny myself the use of it, so when I do this challenge again, which I am thinking of bringing back as maybe a monthly kind of challenge that I do, randomising from Colouring Heavens and randomising pages and all that stuff, because I do have a big collection of Colouring Heavens now. I never get around to colouring in most of them, so I thought maybe that would be a good way to use them and maybe get me to colour in the ones that aren't particularly my favourites. And yeah, thinking of bringing that in every month as a little bit of a challenge for myself. But this one I think turned out really well in the end. There was a point, I think, if you've watched the video, you'll probably hear me mention it, that I'm not exactly sure if the idea is going to work, but I think we ended up pulling it together, and she does work really well there. And I didn't bring in any embellishments or anything like that. I just kept it to the chalk pastels and the pencils for that one, with that limited colour palette that I drew out of the book that was randomised for me. So even though it was a little bit of a challenge, that was the idea, to give myself a little bit of a challenge. So yeah, pretty pleased with how she's turned out, and she was fun. I do love myself a challenge. So there we go. That is the one we coloured from Little Cutie Special Colouring Heaven by Daria Sakisoy. Next, we're moving on to another one from a video on the channel. This is from Ladies of Leisure by Zan Von Zed. And this one was also a challenge from one of my Facebook groups I belong to, Colour It In Challenges Facebook group. And the challenge was to colour a fictional character. And I do have quite a few books that already have fictional characters in them. But yeah, this is me. I like to give myself a bit of a challenge. So what I wanted to do was find just a normal colouring page and change it to be a fictional character. And I was feeling like colouring Zan Von Zed, so I picked this book, and I ended up turning my lady into Katniss Everdeen from the Hunger Games. And this one is another one on channel. You can see how I coped with actually colouring that one. There she is. And again, really pleased with how she turned out. I do love most of the pages I ended up with this month. And this one, she was a marker base with pencil shading. I did actually try and blend the markers to give her this kind of outfit going on here, which I think worked quite nicely. I'm getting better at it. I do want to practice some more, but I am getting better at it. I did add in this bow here. I added in this quiver of arrows. I just changed what was on her back. I added in this quiver of arrows. I coloured those with acrylic markers, because behind her here there was a bit of a townscape going on, or city or town or village, lots of houses anyways, and I wasn't up for colouring all those, so I just cut those out and added in my own background there. This one was a photo from National Geographic of a solar eclipse or lunar eclipse, something along those lines, that I thought if I put that in the background it would give the kind of impression of the box art from the Hunger Games. I was going for the kind of Mockingjay sort of look from the later films. And when I looked up the box art, what they'd done is they'd taken the Mockingjay logo, which is kind of a flying bird, sort of in a circular sort of logo, and they'd put that behind Katniss in such a way that the wings looked as if they were coming from Katniss, from her back. So I thought that looked really good, and I wanted to bring that into my colouring. So what I did, I found a picture of a bird in a big kind of nature book, an old nature book that I have. And I cut out the bird and kind of rearranged a few pieces to make it look as if there was a flying bird kind of logo going on behind her. Unfortunately, all you end up seeing is the wings and the tail. There is a little bit more of that I did actually make out of the photo from the book, but it works. So yeah, I'm good enough to go with it, I think. There's some washi tape, black washi tape, just to tidy up the edges of the collage we did there. So yeah, pretty simple, I think, that one. But it works quite well, and it does end up giving that kind of feeling of the cover art, the box art for the Mockingjay. So I was quite pleased with how it turned out. Again, I'm going to say that so many times in this video, but yeah, I was pretty pleased with how that one turned out, and it is a video on the channel, that one, if anyone's interested in seeing the process, having fun with a little bit of collage there. So that one is by Zan von Zed, and that is from Ladies of Leisure. Next we have another one that I did colour on the channel, and this one was pretty much a full colour along. I think my phone cut out for maybe the last 10 minutes or so that was just me fixing a few details, putting a few finishing touches. So yeah, I don't think you really missed super much. The rest of it is all on the camera. I kind of left as unedited as possible, and I just popped that up online. And this one was my favourite picture in this book that I'd been dying to colour for a while, and it is kind of a darker, more kind of gothic picture. There is a skeleton in this one. And here's our lady here. She was my favourite picture in this book, as I said, and I'd really wanted to colour her, and I took Halloween as kind of an excuse to go ahead and colour this lady, and again, pleased with how she turned out. I really love her. I ended up using Prismacolor pencils. This paper is kind of weird paper. It's sort of watercolour paper, but sort of not. It's kind of soft, and it's got a texture to it, so some pencils don't work super well on there. The Castle Art and the Arteza pencils don't really work super well on this paper, so I tried the Prismacolors, which do seem to work. So yeah, a little tip, if you do want to colour in this book, Prismacolors work pretty well. And then I brought in watercolours for the background. Of course, the white gel pen is pretty much a given. I brought in the gold gel pen for a headdress, and I did stick on a few little crystals in the end, just kind of random crystals into a headdress. And not sure we can get those twinkling in the lamps, but there are some crystals in her headdress there. And the rest of it is the pencils, Prismacolor pencils, and the watercolour. Yeah, I'm really happy with her. My original idea was maybe to stick to an orange and kind of blue sort of colour scheme with her. I ended up going into the more kind of ochres and umbers there as well, which really worked as well. And I brought in the reds because I wanted to give her red makeup, and these flowers look like poppies. So yeah, that all worked. And we did actually manage to get away without dripping the watercolour into the spine of the book, because that is a problem because it's such a thick book, this one. If you are painting with watercolour, it tends to drip down into the middle, and that is the problem I ran into with my work in progress in the front of this book. I could show those. anyone's interested, I do actually have a work in progress in the front of this book, but yeah, this one here is a work in progress in front of the book with watercolours. But I did run into the problem with the watercolours seeping down into the spine there, so I've ended up having to bring in watercolour for all these pages here as the blue kind of splodged onto these pages. So yeah, that is a little bit of a problem with this book, with the pages being so thick that the watercolour kind of runs through, gets into the spine and goes on to the previous pages. But this one I managed to get away with it, so yeah, again a bonus, and it's super fun to colour. She was my favourite one in the book. As I said, I do love the kind of darker, more kind of Gothic style pictures. And I thought she fitted in quite nicely with my Halloween theme this month. So that is my picture from Find Colour by Googly. I'm not sure I mentioned that, but this is Find Colour by Googly, Googelly, however you say his name. Is it on the front? Yeah, by Googelly there. That's how you spell it. I'm not sure how you say it, but from that book anyways. The next one we're moving on to is the slightly gory one. I did mention at the beginning of the video, this is from Colouring Heaven Halloween Special issue 66. And this one is a zombie face with blood splatter, so if anybody's not wanting to see anything like that, then please be looking away now. And this one was a work in progress when I first started working on him. I'll pop up a screenshot here. And it was a sectional colouring challenge when I first started him. I was only going to colour in those kind of red areas there. That's all I was going to colour. But this month I decided to kind of revisit him. And I ended up colouring the whole picture. And I think he's quite effective, and he was super fun to do. So that's how he looked like before I started on him this month. And here's our zombie guy now. There we go. He's not the prettiest guy, but he was super fun to be colouring this month, because basically it's a lot of scribbling with the alcohol markers to get this kind of greeny, bluey zombie skin going on. A couple of shades of blue, some grey, some green, and just playing around with the markers there, which was super fun. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. And then once I'd got a bit of a texture with the markers and the colourless blender, I went in and I shaded with coloured pencils. I did a bit of a white gel pen and dabbing it off with a finger, again to give a little bit of texture, and I really love it. Yeah, it was really fun. The background I gave this kind of manuscript sort of texture with chalk pastels, and throwing on a little bit of coffee there for the splotches to get it looking really grungy. I drew it in a few folds and kind of tears in the paper. And for the text, I found an old medieval manuscript online, and I printed that out and transferred it onto the page. Just went over it with a black pencil to make it look as if it was kind of faded ink or something going on there. A little bit of smaller text in the background. There's some gold Sharpie just around the edges, kind of framing off the manuscript there. And yeah, all in all, really fun, this one. Really glad to be actually having him finished, because he's been a work in progress for a fair few years and he's finally done. Next we're moving on to Garden Lady by Lana Green, and this one this month was a buddy colour with Diane Dreams in Colour. I will link her Instagram and her YouTube down in the description below, so you guys can go and check out all her lovely colourings. And the one we decided to colour in this one is this lady here. I'll just move off to the side so you can have her both on the screen at the same time there, because her version is absolutely gorgeous. There we go. I do love the colours that she's used there, with the turquoise of the robe and kind of reddish orange of the fruits, and I think that looks really lovely when it's all put together there. And I thought it would be nice to have them both up so we can have a little bit of a contrast there, because I did go a little bit crazy on mine here. I wanted to go for a kind of Halloween-y vibe, and I think I ended up going towards the Day of the Dead rather than Halloween, but all in all I think she works, so yeah, I'm happy with it. It was a little bit of a struggle, this one, to be honest, because the watercolours weren't working on the paper. That could have been because I did initially go in with a layer of chalk pastel, because I wanted the background to be a pale kind of greyish blue, but as I went on it really wasn't working, so I ended up abandoning that idea, and I think that might have stopped the watercolours from working properly as I wanted them to. They were sinking right into the paper and not really staying on the top, so I could play around and get a few little blobs and blotches that I like to have going on. I couldn't really have that happening. I'm not sure if that is because of the chalk pastel. I'll have to experiment a little bit further on, see if I can get watercolour effects happening without any chalk pastel. So yeah, I went ahead and painted most of this picture with watercolour. I tried to give the effect of night and day here with her robe, the night sky with the galaxy here, and the kind of daytime brighter blue. I gave a base of watercolour to all the rest of the picture, apart from her skin, which is just pencils. I think that is Prismacolor pencils. I wanted her skin to be really, really pale to keep with the Day of the Dead kind of makeup idea. The rest I shaded on top of the watercolour with pencils, possibly again Prismacolor, but I'm not entirely sure. I added in some gold gel pen for the edges on her robe. I actually went around the outline on her robe as well with the gold gel pen. I splashed on a little bit of gold ink just for a little bit of sparkle there. I went in with the white gel pen for a few little places, and I did stick on some of my stick-on crystals. I also brought in some washi tape I've used for the edges of the frame here, but I thought that fitted in quite nicely with my spooky kind of Day of the Dead theme that I did end up having going on with these moon phases, and also fitted in with the day and the night sky I had going on with her robe. So I'll just bring us in for a little bit of a close-up before we move on. And there we go. That is in focus. We can get those crystals kind of glittering there and the gold ink. Yeah, really, really happy with how she's turned out, even though she was a little bit of a struggle there. I love the colour combination with like the purple, the pink and the gold. I think that's worked super nicely. And yeah, altogether really pleased, even though it was a little bit nerve-wracking to be going a little bit crazy in this book. It's one of my favourite books, so yeah, I really, really didn't want to be messing it up, but I think it pulled together in the end and worked out really nicely. So again, another one I'm super happy with this month. And that one is from Lana Green, and that is Garden Lady. The next one we're moving on to, this is Grimm Fairy Tales. And there's a variety of artists in this book. I'll see if I can find a list of the artists. There we go, there's the list of the artists. We can get that on screen. That's a list of the artists there. I'm not entirely sure which one drew the picture that I did work on. I'm thinking it was Dawn McTeague. The second lady here, I think it was Dawn McTeague, but I'm not entirely sure. And this one was also a work in progress, and there really wasn't very much to be doing with this one, to be honest. It's a little bit of a cheat, but I will pop up here a scan of what she looked like when I first started working on her this month, and you'll see that, yeah, there isn't really a lot to be doing there at all. A little bit of flowers and stuff down the side, I think, one of her arms, and her face with the makeup, the Day of the Dead makeup. I think that's all I really had to be going on with. So this month I just knuckled down and got her finished, and it only took a couple hours, so I don't know why she was waiting so long to be finished. I think it was because the makeup on her face was a little bit detailed, and I was putting myself off with that, I think. But there we go, that's what she looks like now. Again, really happy with hers. I'm happy with most of them this month. It was a really old whip that I just went ahead and finished. A variety of pencils I think I brought into this. I tried to use the Artisas because this is what I was using when I was colouring her, I think. I just went ahead and finished these roses, her arm and her face. That's about all that needed doing. And I added in a little bit of a background because she was looking a little bit plain, but I didn't really want to bring in anything fancy because she herself is, yeah, really pretty complicated there. She does have a marker base. Yeah, a marker base was already done, so I didn't really have to worry about doing that. I think that was with Touch Cool markers, because it is quite an old work in progress. I did bring in, again, the stick-on crystals that we've got going on there. And for our background, I went in with a wash of coffee, quite a faint wash of coffee, so I'm not sure it'll be showing up on the camera. Maybe if we bring her a little bit closer, there we go. I went in with a wash of coffee for her background and shaded a little bit with, that's an Arbadura pencil, burnt umber, I think, Arbadura pencil. It works really well with coffee. I've used it a few times before and it does work really well with coffee. I gave her a white gel pen outline, again to make it stand out from that very faint background we have going on, and yeah, not very much to do at all, so really glad to have her finished. Next, we're moving on to Dark Beauty, and this is by Crook. This one was also a work in progress, so I'll pop up a scan here of what she looked like before I started. And some of you may remember from a past video, this is one that I started and then abandoned because the paper was really not very good in this book. It's an Amazon book and it was printed in Great Britain, so the Britain paper is not that good in my experience. Any Amazon paper printed in Great Britain is never usually very good, and I was really, really struggling with that paper. So I'd basically, in my head, I'd written off this piece and I thought, well, nothing I can do can make this any worse, so I'm going to play around with it and see what I can make happen, and I could feel really free that it doesn't really matter what I do to this page. It's basically written off anyway, so it doesn't matter if anything goes wrong. But in the end, I was really, really happy with it. Here we go. Super, super happy with this one. It's one of my favourites this month. Really love how he turned out, or she turned out rather. So for this one, all I had done really was her hair, I think, and that's about it. And the pencils weren't working really well on this paper at all. I was trying to use the Arteza and the Castle Art, and the paper is really soft. So the paper was ripping and it was wrinkling after a few layers of pencil, and it really wasn't going very well. So for her hair, I thought maybe I could try just shading it with markers. So I took out my old Touch Cool marker set, found a few browns that were still working, and I went ahead and I started colouring her hair. I think I added a few little pencil touches as well. I think it's kind of a reddish colour I've used with pencil, and the white to pick out these kind of strand lines, and I was really happy with how that was going. Of course, I added in the white gel pen. That's a given, as I said. But yeah, I was really happy with how her hair was going. And I thought, oh, maybe I can play around with this a little more and see what I can make happen. So I put out these flowers here out of scrapbooking paper, and I kind of collaged them in to give her more of a flower crown rather than the gold crown that she had going on. And I liked how that was going. But I didn't like the kind of rays of gold I had in the background. So I coloured over those with a acrylic marker, which turned out to be a little bit streaky. So I stuck these butterflies on to try and distract from that, but I still didn't like how that was looking. So I went over again with an alcohol marker to try and even that out, and I dabbed on some hand sanitizer gel to try and give a little bit of a texture. And when I did scan it in, it ended up looking kind of like crushed velvet with the dull matte texture and then the shiny acrylic underneath, and I thought that ended up looking really nice. So really pleased with the background as well. Her skin I did with Prismacolor pencils, and they seem to work okay on this paper. Not the best, but okay. So this paper might actually be workable with really soft pencils, and that's a bonus. For these feathers on the sides of her face, I found these feathers I'd coloured for a tutorial a while back, and they were just sitting with just these feathers coloured on the page. So I cut those out and I put them onto her face as white feathers rather than the black ones I think I was probably going to be aiming for, because these colours matched with my flowers, which worked out really well. The birds I did with acrylic marker. They're basically all acrylic marker. The birds, trying to make it look kind of more like a painting rather than being coloured, and try to make them look iridescent like ravens with their slightly kind of blue-black sort of feathers going on there. That worked really well. Again, added in a couple of flowers down here. The gold is marker with Castle Art's gold pencil shading, and her dress here is scrapbooking paper. There we go, you can see the scrapbooking paper in the background there. I just cut out the shape here where her dress was coming in, added in the paper in the background, and I shaded that with a little bit of a purple. And all in all, I think it's pulled together really well. Oh, and I added in crystals for the eyes of the birds as well. Blue on this side and purple on that side, as that's what I tried to do with her face there. I'm not entirely sure if that's makeup or if it's her skin, but it works quite well, so I'm running with it. And yeah, I love how it's turned out. I will bring it up for a little bit of a closer look. See if we can get that texture on the background showing. Yeah, that just looked like crushed velvet when I scanned it, so I was super, super happy. You can tell, yeah, I'm really chuffed with this one this month. Really happy. The eyes on the birds are stick-on crystals. Kind of, I think they're supposed to be daisies, but with the circle around the outside of like the main gem in the middle, it does look like a bird's eye, I thought, so I went with those. And yeah, I'm really, really happy with that one. I'm so happy I went back and tried to play with it rather than just writing it off, so one of my favourites this month. There we go. That is from Dark Beauty by Crook. And the last couple I'm going to show you this month are from Colouring Heaven Gothic Pinup Special. This is by Anna Marine. And for these two in here, I was scrolling through Facebook and I saw this really lovely art that was from Inktober, I think, that somebody had done using a black ink, shades of black ink and gold paint. And I thought, oh, that looks really nice. And I wanted to try out that effect myself. So for this one, I played with grayscale and gold. And I'm again really happy with how these have turned out, as most of them this month. You're probably fed up of hearing me say that this month, but yeah, most of them I am super, super happy with how they've turned out. And these, yeah, again, really happy with them. I'll show you this one first because this is the one that I actually did first. This lady here, she's probably glaring a little bit. I do apologise for that. But this is the lady that I did first. And she is done with a couple of shades of grey from Ohuhu markers, black Sharpie, gold Sharpie, and some gold ink. I might have brought in a gold gel pen just to neaten off a few edges, but yeah, really, really simple. A few shades of grey and the gold Sharpie. That's yeah, that's it. Just the markers and a little bit of gold, and yeah, I'm really obsessed with how these have turned out. I do love them. Really, really quick to do, really fun, really simple, and I do love the way they're so graphic and kind of, yeah, simplified. So that is the first one that I did. Yeah, really happy, as I've said. And I did do another one further towards the front. I decided to go for something a little bit more detailed. And there we go, a little bit more detailed. I did bring in another shade of grey here from Touch Cool. This grey here in the background, oh, glare, sorry, that's the lamp. This shade of grey in the background here, that's green grey from Touch Cool. I also brought that in for a little bit of variation to the shades of grey, and I think it's worked super well. It did react really, really nicely with the hand sanitizer gel there. So I really love that texture we ended up going on with in the background. Again, a couple of shades of Ohuhu, black Sharpie, a gold gel pen, and gold Sharpie. I went around the edges of this one with some gold washi tape as well, just to be a little bit adventurous and kind of neaten off the edges as well, because as I said, I'm not the neatest. And again, really happy with how she's turned out. And this lady kind of leads on to my theme for November as well, which I'm not entirely sure it's going to be deer specifically or antlers in general, because looking through my colouring books, I do have lots of pictures of deer, kind of red deer, stags in forests and stuff, that I might like to play with, but I've also got lots of pictures with people with antlers and maybe creatures with antlers, so I'm not entirely sure if it will be deer specifically or antlers in general. I'm going to see what pictures I can find, what I end up colouring, what's speaking to me during the time. But whichever way I go, I think it's going to be a fun month. Quite a few pictures I have found that will fit in with that theme, especially if I do bring in the people, the kind of fawn kind of people with antlers as well. So I think that's going to be pretty interesting. So I look forward to finding a few pictures to colour for that theme in November. But for now, thank you for watching, everybody. I hope you've enjoyed looking back on all the pages I've coloured for my spooky Halloween October. Take care, everyone, and I'll see you in future videos. Bye!